Brock Purdy has been in a funk for about a month for the 49ers. Can he break out of it in time to save the season? It's going to be dicey, but we did get a little bit of good news today in terms of Sunday's game against the Packers. We'll talk about it all on today's Gold Standard podcast brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Gold Standard podcast and the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He is Levin Black. Levin, it's Thursday, and once again, the 49ers season appears to hang in the balance.
Yes, it is Thursday. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge to our podcast listeners and our YouTube people. YouTube knows what I'm getting at. Yeah, the 49ers balance to the season. I think it's pretty tipped one direction already.
Yeah, I know you think that. I know that. Look, I'm on this. I think it's unlikely that they make the playoffs, but they're not eliminated just yet. They are still a game out of the division. And if you win your division, regardless of how bad your division is, you make the playoffs. And, I know everything that people are thinking, the Niners haven't beaten a team with a winning record. That's true. The leader of the division, the Arizona Cardinals, have beaten one team with a winning record all season, and that would be the Chargers. And the Chargers are a very good team, not to discredit them, but, acting like the Niners are so much worse than the Chargers or than the Cardinals, excuse me, it's probably not true.
With the schedule that's remaining for the divisional teams, it gets pretty easy I was reading that as I was trying to talk. It gets pretty clear is what I was wanting to say. I was wanting to say it's clear the Niners have very, very small chances. They have a very difficult schedule remaining, and multiple other teams in the division do not.
So Arizona is in Seattle in week 12. Then they're in Minnesota. Then they play Seattle again, which I hate division sandwiches and schedules, but that's what it is. Then they play New England and Carolina. Those are easy. Then they finish with the Rams and the Niners. Again, they've only beaten one team with a winning record all year. So are they that good? I don't know. Should they win a lot of those games? Yeah, but it's not like they're a powerhouse. It's not like the Lions are in the division with the 49ers, right? Or the Chargers or the Chiefs or something like that. This is still up for grabs. It's unlikely, but it's there.
Yes, it's there. Look, this might be the worst division in football this year. It's happened rapidly. The Niners kind of propped it up last year, but outside of the Niners, there wasn't that good of a team in the division. And this year, the Niners are much worse. And while some teams are better, their starting point for being better wasn't very high. There's no team here that I think is a contender.
In the whole division, you're saying?
Yeah. So, yeah, you might, maybe there's a chance the Niners get in. It can't be 9-8. They have to get 10-7. 9-8 means somebody else will be 9-8 in this division, and you're not winning the tiebreaker.
Yeah, it would be dicey. That would be a dicey road to walk for sure. The weird thing is, like, record-wise, I agree with you. I actually think this is one of the best coach divisions now in the NFL. You've got Shanahan in San Francisco and McVay. I think Mike McDonald is a very good coach in Seattle, and Jonathan Gannon has his stuff together in Arizona, man. Like, I actually think the coaches in the division have an argument to be one of the stronger ones in the NFL.
It is a weird spot. I do agree with you. I think all coaches at this point, McDonald looks promising, and Gannon, I would say, looks promising. I wouldn't have the verdict out for either one of them just yet, but you have the Cardinals. I would say they're on the rise. I would say the Rams have hit their bottom, and they'll be better going forward. Because they've managed to replace Donald without a huge drop-off, and they're going to have some draft picks here, and I think they will be getting better than what they are now. Right now, it's kind of Matt Stafford and not much else because Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua have been in and out of the lineup. And then there's the Niners. The Niners are sitting in, they need to do a quick reboot. It could work really well, or they might end up needing to do a full rebuild. And then you have Seattle, which in my opinion, Seattle is the team that's just saying, we're going to stay in purgatory. We're not good enough to really contend, but we're good enough to kind of push for the division title, and maybe we make the playoffs every other year.
As long as they have Geno, like that's what they're going to be, and we'll have to see. Let's talk about our quarterback. That, of course, is Brock Purdy. He was limited in practice today, 11, but he didn't throw a pass. So that is concerning. You know, he's on the injury report with the sore shoulder, which is the vaguest of all possible things. I personally, Sunday, did not think he looked the same throwing the ball. He looked to me like he was kind of pushing the ball. And I'm talking about from the beginning of the game, not even like, oh, after he took a couple hits after he was scrambling. From the beginning of the game, to me, it looked like something was funky with his throwing and he was pushing the ball.
Tinfoil hat time, right?
Oh, here we go.
Conspiracy theory. We've both wondered, I don't know where you just went. Rob just dropped from, man, Rob is having a rough day. Conspiracy theory is that, oh, you're back. You're just on the wrong side now. Bad day for you is what I was saying while you were gone. But tinfoil hat is, we've been talking about, I wonder if his elbow is giving him issues. Well, if his elbow is giving him issues and he's compensating for it, what could happen to the shoulder?
The shoulder could get agitated.
It's what happens with pitchers a lot. They get one little thing that's kind of bothering them on their throwing arm. They compensate for it, and it causes their shoulder or their elbow to have problems. That's the conspiracy theory that pops in my mind is he compensating for an elbow, and that's thrown off his shoulder?
Maybe his shoulder's fine. I don't know, but I'll say this. I watched JT O'Sullivan's breakdown of the game. Kyle Posey has an awesome breakdown of the game as well, which is not behind a paywall. If you don't want to join the QB School Patreon. Brock passed up a ton of throws down the field, deeper throws down the field. He saw it, he was looking at it, and he just didn't throw it. In the red zone, not in the red zone, I don't know what it is. Now, I don't know if it's just him not seeing the field well, which maybe that could be it. Because let's be honest, what do we love about Brock Purdy is he usually sees it and lets it rip deeper down the field. I mean, we were talking before about how he's got to take more of the checkdowns because he usually throws deeper down the field. Yeah. That's why it was so bizarre to watch the film of this game and be like, dudes are separating, dudes are getting open. He's just got to let that ball go.
I don't know what's going on. There's not much consistency there from Brock in terms of what his issues are. It's like each week it's something different, which is, it is concerning, but I do think that other teams, Brock Purdy gets an unfair opponent, and that's that other teams are not going to run anything that you've seen before. They are going to completely change everything when they play the 49ers, and that makes it more difficult for Brock. That's kind of the unspoken, untalked about aspect. Everybody talks about, oh, it's so easy to be the Niners quarterback because of the talent and the offensive coordinator. And that is true. I think there's more positive than negative, but one of the negatives is the opponents know that. And so what do they do when they play the Niners? They throw everything new that they've created and been saving at the 49ers.
It's a difficult spot to be in. And I think with Brock, because his asset throwing the football is his anticipation. He throws with great anticipation, but you can't anticipate things if something is messing with your vision, if you can't see the field the way you normally do. And I think you can do that a few different ways with Brock. One, if you just get a hell of a lot of pressure and he doesn't have time to actually look and check. And I think we've seen him bail out of some pockets. Sometimes he needs to, and sometimes it's been a little early. That's one way to disrupt it. I think you can disrupt it with simulated pressure, like confusion at the line of scrimmage. And I think you can disrupt it with disguised coverages later on. And if you can just muddy the water a little bit and muddy the picture, you really diminish his greatest strength, which is being able to throw the ball with anticipation. And if he's just a tick late because of some of the limitations on his arm, he might have a more difficult time in that situation than, say, a Justin Herbert, a Josh Allen, who can be a tick late seeing things and then just go, I'm just going to rip it in here. And they blast it in and it, the chains keep moving.
You also can't be a tick late with this offensive line. Let's be honest. Like I have a hard time. I go back and forth in my own head on Brock. There are things I've seen that are concerning, and he has definitely not been perfect, but I also sit there and go, and he's playing behind such a terrible offensive line. And at the same time, his coach isn't doing him any favors this year. It does certainly seem like the offense that Kyle Shanahan is known for, and that half the league is almost running, has been figured out. Because all of the Kyle Shanahan guys are struggling this year offensively, especially in the red zone.
I mean, I don't know if I agree with that they've been figured out. They're number 5 in DVOA on offense. Like in the
Yeah, but
whole league.
McVay, McDaniel, Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, the 49ers, and I'm forgetting one of them.
I saw the Akash tweet.
Yeah, the Akash tweet. I talked about that in week 4. I said it's a bit early, but the offenses that are running this outside zone scheme are struggling, and those struggles have continued. I get that they are moving the ball, but as we have pointed out, what happens a lot when they actually find success? Brock is ad-libbing. It's not the play calling. It's not the play design. It is the ad-libbing and the scrambles that keep moving the ball.
But the Packers are lower in the 49ers in red zone touchdown percentage, and yet they're 7-3 on the season. As opposed to
they've won a lot of close games. They're the reverse of the 49ers. The Niners are doing just enough to lose, and the Packers are doing just enough to win. I think the Packers have 3 wins by 3 points or less. The Niners have 4 losses by 2 points or less?
I think it's too simplistic to say, well, this offense has been figured out. I think that
it is. So yes, it is being simplistic. It's not saying the entire offense is terrible, throw it completely out. But I think it is shown that this offense, as it's been running, is not good enough anymore, and you need to evolve it.
I think it has evolved. Like for example, the throws that Brock missed on Sunday, that he just didn't let it rip. There was one play in the red zone where Saubert is wide open in the end zone, and Brock checks it down to Deebo. Now, he did gain a first down, so they still could have scored on that possession. But if that's Kittle, Brock's throwing that thing in there, and no one. And I think it changes how we feel about the offense. I think that some of it is maybe some of the plays aren't working as well as they used to. Some of it is Brock not seeing the field. Some of it is the run blocking. The run blocking, it was awful. It was as bad a run blocking performance from the 49ers as I think I have ever seen, which is stunning to me because this is usually historically the point in the season where their run blocking gets better. If you look at Kyle Shanahan, when they've gone on these runs, their run blocking, all of a sudden, I've watched so many Baldy breakdowns where he's like, look at all these offensive linemen in perfect sync and perfect alignment as they block these guys. That did not happen Sunday. It was brutal, especially Saubert and Jalen Moore. They didn't know what the hell they were doing.
I will say this, regardless of how this season finishes, barring the miracle turnaround, I do think that Kyle Shanahan, whether he wants to or not, should be forced to bring in a different offensive line philosophy, one that's more advanced. Brian Baldinger has talked about it quite a bit, and some of the former players have talked about it, that the Niners don't do a lot of, you don't see them adjusting things pre-snap because they just say, well, we only need a couple seconds. They do some, I'm talking about the offensive line protections.
Okay.
It's a pretty simplified offensive line protection. You don't see the center pointing out, okay, change, and they're trying to trade who's doing what. They just, based on how many guys are lined up, that's who they're going to block. And that makes it easy to get confused and post snap if the defense shows something else and disguised stuff. That's why there's guys that go unblocked way too often. I think they need to bring somebody else in and allow him to be run the offensive line blocking scheme that you want. Obviously, you're going to have to run the outside zone rushing, so it's going to be somebody that has to be familiar with that. But I do think there needs to be some changes on that coaching staff. And no, I don't mean Kyle Shanahan. I know you think Kyle Shanahan is perfect. At least that's what I heard today. But
heard a lot of things today. If you caught my stream earlier with Grant,
yeah, Kyle has his warts, and for the first time, I'm truly questioning things. Whether or not he is going to be successful as the head coach going forward, I don't know. I am as doubtful in Kyle Shanahan's ability to be successful going forward as I've ever been in his tenure. But as I've said, you're not moving on from him. There's been too much success. He is going to get next season, regardless. If next season is like this year or worse, then yeah, that's when you move on. But at the same time, like, I don't like what I'm seeing, and I do think things have gotten a little too stale. And that goes for the coaching staff too.
I think that people see the result and they think that, and they don't look as much at the process, in my opinion. Like Brock, an incomplete pass or a pass that doesn't get completed, you're like, oh, this offense is stale. But if Brock is missing a dude that's wide open 50 yards down the field, I don't feel the same way about the play as I did when I watched it on the live broadcast.
It's hard to quantify, and that's always been the difficulty in analysis. You don't know what the quarterback's being told he has to do by play design. You know what I mean? And so you don't know how much of it is he didn't find that guy because it was fifth in the reads, or he didn't find that guy because he didn't see something pre-snap or post-snap that he should have seen.
What the concerning thing to me is when he's passing up throws that I've seen him make. It's not even like, hey, this is like a new thing or whatever.
Right.
And he's like, there was one play to Pearsall where Pearsall's on like a deep corner route and it's there and he's looking right at it at the top of his drop. And I'm just like, dude, lay it out there. It's weird to say with Brock Purdy because I never thought I would have to say that because I love that he was taking the doubles over the singles. But like, it's hard, man. Quarterbacking is hard. The defenses are learning your tendencies and learning more about you than ever. Brock is coming in at a point where defenses are better equipped to take on the Shanahan style scheme than ever before because it's become so prevalent and it's been around for so long. Like if you had Brock in 2019, I think he would be just dominating things because it was, the Shanahan scheme wasn't as prevalent then. It was a totally different point in offensive, just like offensive, what's the word? Not fashion, but I don't know. I can't think of the word. My words are failing me today. But yeah, I think you'd be like lighting it up if it was 2019. But unfortunately, it's not 2019. It's 2024. And this is the reality. What is
You
going
cut
on?
out right there at the end. You said the reality, and then I heard nothing.
I said this is the reality that he's got to live in.
Yeah, I think the next handful of weeks, or even really the next 3 weeks, it's a fork in the road for this franchise. Not this team, this franchise.
Or because of Brock's future?
Brock's future, some of the vets' future. I think if things go sideways and let's say they lose the next 3 games, there's a decent chance that you start getting vets speaking out and acting out. Big neon sign, Deebo Samuel. I don't see staying quiet in that scenario, to where Kyle starts to lose that locker room. And now it starts to become like there is a train wreck potential here.
Barrows had a mailbag column yesterday. I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
I was just going to say there's a train wreck potential here, but it is a fork in the road because it could also suddenly get back on the rails and start speeding back up.
Barrows had a mailbag column yesterday, and I think the first question he put in the column was, have you seen signs that Kyle is losing the locker room? Totally fair question to ask at this point. And Barrows said no. And not only that, like it's the opposite because all the biggest leaders and voices in this locker room are like Shanahan disciples, Kittle, Juice, Trent Williams, Fred Warner, like they're all in on Kyle. So as long as you've got that core group of the veterans and the leaders on the team, you're not going to lose the locker room because the locker room's going to follow those guys.
Are they?
At this point, I mean, look, maybe it changes going forward, like you said, but to this point, at least according to Matt Barrows. I'm just,
Yes.
relaying things.
As Brisbee Life says, the Cabo is alive and well. Yeah. And that is a clique within that locker room. What if half of the rest of the locker room sees it and says, I am sick of this little group over here getting to be teachers' pets. I'm done with all of them, and I'm done with the coach because he's allowing, you know what I mean? Like when you have, I'll put it in a real world situation. When you have a boss that's no longer being effective and he has a bunch of people who suck up to him that he keeps rewarding, the rest of the staff is going to know that and start tuning them out and talk about them behind their back. That's what a fractured locker room the Niners could end up having if things don't correct themselves. Like, I do think there's a chance here for a revolt against the Cabo clique by the end of the season if it continues to go south.
But who's going to lead it? Because you can't have a revolt unless you have somebody that's balling out on the field leading. Like, you can't be like Jacob Cowing, right? Who has never played. He's a rookie. You're not leading that revolt. Who would it be? Because you need somebody that's playing well, that's got some pelts on the wall in order to do it.
Lenore would be the one that jumps to mind because he is outspoken enough and he's not part of that.
It's a good choice.
But I do think it's that secondary overall because Mustafa, I think, is rising. He has a strong attitude. Jair Brown is kind of more of a quiet. None of those guys are part of that group. You don't see them being part of that group.
Right.
I do think there's a chance that there's a bit of a pushback from that entire secondary. And there is offense. I don't see as much, but you could see like lesser guys who aren't getting opportunities having problems, like a Jacob Cowing. He's not going to go public with it, but he could be behind the scenes in the locker room, kind of creating this group, being part of this group that's going, yeah, those guys are the problem. We need to move on. We need fresh blood. You know what I mean? Like there's a chance here that you get a divide of these young players looking and saying, those guys aren't it anymore. We need to move on to be able to realize our potential.
I do think it's harder to do that. Like, Kittle is still playing awesome right now. McCaffrey, he's only played a couple games, but he has had 100 yards from scrimmage in both of the games. So it's not like he's, so terrible. When your leaders are playing well, it does make it hard to have that sort of mutiny. Kittle actually just praised Kyle Shanahan. I don't have the raw video file, but I made a short out of it. So let's see if I could just do this.
There's no blame to put anywhere. I just think that, honestly, there is a little bit of blame. I think the blame is on our offense needs to perform at a better, and that's players. And really, Coach Shanahan gives us opportunities to go out there and close games, and we kind of miss on those opportunities, whether it's missed blocking on a run play by anybody, bad cut, even Brock with a bad throw. Like we just missed out on some of those opportunities that we've been cleaner before in the past. And I think that's one thing. I think our defense is playing at a level enough for us to win. I think we should be scoring 25 plus points a game to be able to win those games. And to me, the pressure's on the offense. And it's not really pressure. It's just like, hey guys, just go play football the way you've been playing, and we have to be better than we have been. There's no blame to put anywhere.
Yes. Like 1,000%. Yeah, I've been saying the exact same thing. Yes, George Kittle. That's it. It's on the offense to close the games. And it was refreshing to hear him say that. And he specifically said, Kyle puts us in position to win the games.
That did seem multiple times like he's trying to say the right thing and he starts to not and he corrects himself. There was two different times that he caught himself there. Oh, there's no blame. Oh, wait, we're supposed to be taking accountability now. That must be something that they've been told. Yeah, there is blame, actually, and it's everybody. But then he doesn't want to throw the coach under the bus. And then you heard him start at the end where he stopped himself again when he started to go off on a tangent to get back to saying the correct thing rather than the real thing. Look, I don't think Kyle – I do think it's a combination of everybody, but that includes the coaching. Kyle is not being as good of a play caller as he is. He's not a terrible play caller, but he is not a difference maker as a play caller this year. He has as many stinkers as he does really good ones, and that used to not be the case. You do have, as I've harped on, the veterans, the leaders, the captains on this team take turns making critical mistakes. Trent Williams will have a hold. And then a couple drives later, Kittle has a hold. And then a couple drives later, Juice will do something, or Deebo will do something. Like Brock will miss throws or take a sack he doesn't have any business taking. Somebody will make a critical mistake. And a lot of times on offense, it's been those veteran guys that have been the all pros, that have been the ones leading the way. So it is on the players to a degree too, but that Kyle's not without blame either.
No, he's not without blame. And I've never said that he's without blame. He can be better. His game management is even more important now because the team is not wildly more talented than everybody else. And that's the one area where he has been seemingly steadfast. We saw him go for it a little more on fourth down earlier in the year, but I feel like he has stopped that. And I think that stuff matters. That is like, to me, that is the biggest area where he can change, and he needs to change. I don't know what will ever get him to do it. I don't know that anything will ever get him to do it. But what I was saying to Steph on Tuesday, why is my camera going in and out? I was saying to Steph on Tuesday, for all the frustrations we have about Kyle Shanahan, when he's sitting at home in the offseason, at the end of the day, he could say to himself, my stuff is working. We've been in 4 of the last 5 NFC championship games. We've been in 2 Super Bowls. Our offense led the league in touchdowns last year. He could say that to himself because of all the success they had on the field. And I know they didn't win the Super Bowl, but he still had a ton of success. But if they miss the playoffs this year, 11, does that cause him to say, you know what? My stuff isn't working the way it once was. I do need to change. Or do you think nothing will ever make him change?
I honestly can't answer that because there are signs that he is extremely arrogant. But he is also somebody that brings in people and is open to other ideas. Like, he would tell, yes, they had to have their ducks in a row. We heard that on that podcast. But he would listen to Mike McDaniel's ideas and incorporate them. Like, he was open to change to a degree, but he is also pretty arrogant in thinking that, if the players just executed perfectly on every play, we would dominate. And it's like, yeah, that's true of any coach. If you call a run play up the middle and the offensive line blocks it really well, guess what? You're going to gain 5 yards every time. It's always the case. But you can make better play calls to put your players in a more likely chance of succeeding. Whether or not he changes, I don't know. I will say this. If you are standing still in the NFL as a play caller, whether offensive or defense, you are already beat. The NFL evolves unlike any other sport. The game evolves rapidly, including within seasons. There are seasons when teams come out and they're running the ball extremely well, and all of the defenses adjust to that. And so then nobody can run the ball. And by the end of the season, it's a pass-happy offense is going off. So you can't ever sit there and say, no, my stuff is working because it worked 4 out of the last 5 years. I don't care what happened in the past. It's about the now, because the NFL changes and defenses make too many adjustments for you to sit back and say, well, I was successful with that last year.
But how do you want the offense to evolve? What things do you want Kyle Shanahan to do that he's not doing? Because I feel like people have said that, but I have heard that way more than I've heard actual specific suggestions on how it should evolve.
I would personally like to see more runs up the middle that aren't tricks. A lot of their runs are long developing, and that is part of the nature of an outside zone blocking scheme. But like this last game, they just kept trying to get the edge. They kept trying to do those long runs that take all the way to the outside, whether it was a Deebo end around or Christian McCaffrey. And it's like, no, go up the middle, get physical with them. We saw Jordan Mason have success with it twice in the game, and then they went away from it. And they kept trying to do these stretch runs, and they're not working. And I think part of that is the offensive line is so bad this year that they can't do long developing plays because they're not going to hold up. Trent Williams isn't bad, but he's not dominant anymore. And everybody else on that, well, I guess Pooney is good, but the other 3 are bad. They're not just, they're nothing to write home about. They are flat out bad. Brendel is the worst center in the league.
Yeah, he's having a rough year.
McKivitz is one of the worst tackles in the league. I don't know that he's the worst because there are some that are just god awful. And Banks, I would put in the bottom third of the league.
Banks
He's
has
not,
had a rough year too.
yeah. It's like
And it's
that offensive line just you can't trust it to hold up. So why are you trying to do these long developing runs where the running back has to go 10 yards before they even get to the line of scrimmage? Just get physical with them. Let your offensive linemen, rather than trying to pull them all the time, let them just say, we're going to try to just push straight forward. I know that's simplistic. It's much more complicated than that.
If you are watching the stream right now, you're seeing the Christian McCaffrey carry chart I've thrown up on the screen. This is just from last week. There's a lot to the edges, but it's hard to run up the middle when you have the worst center in the league and one of the worst left guards in the league too. Like it's a tall order. I think they were trying to get the edge. They just didn't block well in the run game, period. It was bad. It was depressing from the 49ers. And that is obviously a huge factor in why the passing game didn't work. Like Kyle's offense needs to function like a train. It takes a while to get going, but when it gets moving, it's very hard to stop. But if you can't run the ball, it just stalls out. And then you can't run the ball on 1st and 10. Now it's 2nd and 10. And then Kyle feels like he's got to pass on 2nd and 10. And then if it's incomplete on 2nd and 10, well, you're not running on 3rd and 10. So you got to pass then. It can get off the rails very, very quickly.
Yeah. And I would like to see, look, Brock's strength is quickly picking up what the defense is doing and pre-snap. You know what type of offense quarterbacks that are like that succeed in the most? A spread offense. I'm not saying go college football, but maybe run some 4 wide receiver sets. Take juice off the field more. Don't run 2 tight ends. Don't have Kittle split out wide as a wide receiver in reality, and that's your tight end. Don't have another one on the line for you. You know what I mean? Like, try to spread them out more and see if Brock can pick it up and play into his strengths, which I'm not saying change the entire offense and just give up on the run and, do something like go run and gun or some kind of offense like that. You can still do the West Coast and you can still put 4 wide receivers out there some of the time to give you a different look, to try to spread it out, to try to get things going, have a little bit easier of a time than just always going out there with usually 2, sometimes 3 wide receivers and a tight end and a fullback.
I do feel like they've gone to more of a shotgun offense since Brock Purdy has taken over as the
shotgun,
starter.
Yes.
They're
running the same plays, but not putting them under center.
Juice, I don't want Juice on the team anymore. So I completely support getting him off the field. And I understand like he can keep the other team in base defense and that gives you options. I get all that, but I would rather see number 19 on the field instead of number 44. And I'm not saying that Jacob Cowling is good, but I would just rather see it. I'm sorry, I would.
I want to see what this offense can be with just leaning into the Purdy's ability to recognize and get through his progressions. Lean into that. Don't make one of his progressions be, well, the fullback's going to try to leak out, and if he gets 15, 20 yards down the field and the offensive line gives him enough time, that might go uncovered and we'll have a deep shot. Like, that's what the juice plays are. The juice plays are, he's going to leak out, and he'll be 4th in the read progression, and maybe 4 seconds after the snap, we get a deep shot because he got by the linebacker that was on him.
That play still does work surprisingly often, considering how often the 49ers have done it. But that can't be the only thing that guy does. And like, oh, yeah, he blocks. Well, his blocking this year has not really been what it was in years past either. There's a reason they asked him to take a giant pay cut. And look, he's not the whole reason for the 49ers offensive issues. I don't want to blame him totally. But, there's another part of this, too, that I saw from Rich Madrid that I thought was interesting and I think worth talking about. And he pointed out that, like, we've all kind of got a little bit spoiled, basically. Rich said, fans really just thought a stretch of 20-plus games scoring 30 points every week was the norm and not an anomaly. Now they're seeing what most NFL teams go through year to year and can't deal with it when the normal attrition and slog of the NFL comes knocking. Part of our frustration with the offense is we keep saying, why aren't you scoring 30 points every single week like you used to score? When in reality, that is not like the bare minimum, like that's not the floor. That's an amazing offense that scores 30 points every week. And you can't just expect that all of the time.
I think the frustration is not why didn't we score 30 points? That's the easy thing for fans to say. The frustration is they move the ball and then they can't finish the job. When they need the points at the end, they can't get the points at the end. When they are able to move the ball consistently, but then not get the touchdown, that is much more frustrating, in my opinion, than just knowing it's going to be a struggle. You know what I mean? Because it shows you, hey, they are really good. They should be putting up 30 plus points. It's not the case of like the Tennessee Titans are not sitting around expecting a touchdown every single drive because they can't move the ball consistently. So they don't have that hope. They're not expecting that. They know that that's not the reality of what's possible. Niner fans know, because the team is still moving the ball at an elite level, that what is possible is scoring a bunch of points. They just make mental mistakes all the time to derail a promising drive. It's a hold, it's a turnover, it's a dropped pass, it's a lining up improperly and having an illegal formation. They find some really dumb, inexcusable way to destroy drives, and that's why it's that much more frustrating.
How much worse would you say the offense is this year than last year?
In terms of what? Because there's a wild discrepancy between different things, as we have already talked about. In terms of yards, they're top 5. In terms of red zone, they're in the bottom 5.
Well, I'm just, in general, like, how much better was last year's offense than this year's?
Significantly.
Because this year's offense is scoring 25 points a game. Last year's offense scored 29 points a game. So if the Niners could just get one more red zone touchdown per game, they'd be right back to the level of last year's offense, which was awesome.
Well, if they got one more red zone touchdown per game, their touchdown percentage in the red zone would jump from 27th best probably into the top 10, because that would be 10 touchdowns at this point, right? That's a significant change. I get what you're saying. And yes, it is that close. And that's part of what's so frustrating. It's just like losing the Super Bowls. You get so close, yet it's been 30 plus years since one's been won. So it's that much more frustrating. Some teams like the Browns, yes, they're frustrated, but they can disconnect because they don't have hope. They know what it is. They don't get so close and then fail.
Sucks to be the Browns. Brisbee Life on Twitch says that offensive aggression exposes other elements like special teams and game management that have cost them in big games and now haunt them in every game. You're right, Brisbee. 100% agree. Because they're not, the offense was like a deodorant. You know, it was like it just covered up a lot of stuff. And now they don't have the deodorant and you're starting to smell the stink a little bit.
Yeah. And it should be also said that part of the reason why they scored 29 points per game last year is because they were calling off the dogs in the fourth quarter.
Well, that may be true. They were kicking the hell out of people. I went back. So I watched Kyle Posey's breakdown of Brock from this past week. And then
you know what you should watch, actually, real quick? You should watch, it was this really awesome show. It was this guy, Rob, arguing with Grant for the entire show.
It was spicy today, for sure. You can go watch that on my YouTube channel. Not now. This is our time. But I watched the Kyle Posey film breakdown, and then I went back and watched Brock against the Cowboys last year. And oh my God, it was like a different guy. He's dropping back, and it's anticipation right over the middle of the field, perfect ball placement. And it's just like, man, that's what it looks like when it's going good. And they just have not been able to get that on the tracks this year. And the other part that's so frustrating for all of us is because we've had to listen to Kyle and players talk about, even Nick Bosa today talked about it. You know, we're close. We're 3 or 4 plays away from being, 7-3 or whatever it is, which is true. But we all, I think, would like to see some more urgency and some more, not panic. I get urgency, I guess is the word. Just like, hey, close. It doesn't matter if you miss by an inch or a mile, you still miss. And there doesn't seem to be that recognition of like, this isn't good enough. We are failing here.
We are so close twice. It's like we have half a Super Bowl. Doesn't work that way. Like you are 5-5. And yeah, it is different when you're so close. But the reasons why it doesn't happen is because of things completely in the players' control that they keep messing up.
Do they fix it this week? That is the question. The Packers like to play a lot of man coverage. That hasn't been a recipe for success for the 49ers in recent years. I gotta believe the run blocking has to be better than it was last week. That should help. But now they're on the road. The elements may be a factor. I'm not sure if rain is in the forecast, but you know how I feel about Brock in the rain. What do you think for this week, Levin?
The same thing I've thought for like the last 4 weeks with this team. I have no effing clue what's going to show up.
Does that make it more enjoyable for you as a fan?
No,
enjoyable.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I hate not knowing, and that goes for anything. Like the people who work with me, no, I cannot stand the unknown.
I work with you.
But not in the same. We're not every single day sitting next to each other having to work. So like at my work right now, we're going through a crew change. They're going to change up the crews and different people are going to work with different people. I have been going out of my mind for the last month because I cannot stand the unknown. I don't care who I work with, but I want to know who I work with. I don't like the up in the air. Don't tell me you're going to change crews until you know what the crews will be and then just announce it. I can't stand. I am somebody, if I think of, oh, I wonder who did that, or, oh, I wonder how that's spelled, or anything like that, I cannot function until I have looked it up.
All right. That's a little weird, but okay.
I can't stand this team. That's part of the reason why I'm so frustrated. I don't know what to expect.
In terms of this week, the 49ers are not the favorite, which has been a change from pretty much forever. Niners are actually getting a point going into Lambeau Field. It doesn't shock me. They were getting more points earlier in the week, so people have come in on the Niners. But, I mean, the problem is exactly what you just said. We don't know which Niners team is going to show up. They could show up to Lambeau Field and smash the Packers. They could show up to Lambeau Field and get completely undressed, and there's an equal chance of both of those happening. I don't think I would touch this game, to be honest with you, Levin.
I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be cold. I'm not saying that because of Green Bay, but I literally just had a cold front roll in today that almost took my power out to where I couldn't do the show because the storm front blew in fast and dropped the temperature like 15 degrees in a minute. But yeah, winter is finally coming. For those of you out in California, there's this thing called winter. Yes, I know you have winter in places like Tahoe and up in the north, but I don't know exactly in Connecticut, but you're not that far from me. It feels like September. The weather in November has been like the weather at the end of September, where you kind of have like a cold morning, but not quite frost. And then during the day, it's in the 60s. That's been the weather. Whereas normally in November, are we getting snow today or not? Because it's cold enough for snow.
You always get this guy too, Andre. 78 today in Phoenix. Thanks, Andre.
Yeah. Come back in the summer. We'll talk about the weather a little bit more because we won't have as much to talk about. And in the summer, you can talk about how, it's 125 degrees today. I cooked cookies on my dashboard.
It's a dry heat. Frisbee Life on Twitch says, you got winner, sucks to be you. Yeah, thanks. If you want to make this bet, whether you're taking the Packers or the Niners, do it with BetUS. They sponsor the show. Thank you very much for that. You can receive 150% on your first deposit and 125% on your second and third deposit up to $2,000. Just use code YouTube150. That's code YouTube150. Remember, with BetUS, you get the fastest payouts in the industry. You get a 24/7 personalized service, 365 days a year, and you get a personal account manager. So if you want to make bets on football, which I'm sure you do, please do it with BetUS. Please and thank you. A lot of people seem to think Brock is not going to play in the game.
I don't think if that was a true possibility, I don't think he would have practiced at all today.
Well, he didn't throw.
I guess that's true. Maybe they're practicing him so that the other team doesn't know that he's not going to play. That is a possibility. It's also a possibility he goes out there and makes 3 throws on the first drive and they pull him because his shoulder's hurting.
If he doesn't play, this is going to sound crazy, and feel free to tell me I'm an idiot, which I'm sure now that I've said that, you'll tell me I'm an idiot.
I'm ready.
Thanks. Let's say Brandon Allen gets in there.
Idiot. Oh, sorry.
I earned that. If he gets in there, I got to imagine Brandon Allen is going to be like, yes, sir, Kyle, sir, I will throw the ball wherever you tell me to throw the ball. Is it possible that the offense functions a little more smoothly because Brandon Allen's in there and he's just like, I'll throw it here because that's what he says, and I'll throw it here because that's what he says?
No.
Not possible.
No. I would say it's possible the offense does something if Dobbs is in there because Dobbs is not consistent. He will turn the ball over 5 times in a game. But he also has those flashes where he completely takes over the game. Dobbs is capable of taking over a game and just dominating you. It's just for every time he does that, he has the next game where he looks like a horrible quarterback who can't process anything.
I liked what I saw from Dobbs because he has the mobility aspect. Let's really hope it doesn't come to that. I've still seen too much of the backup quarterback in San Francisco in recent years, whoever it is.
I will say this, regardless of who plays quarterback, if they lose this game, wheels are coming off.
Well, then they got to play Buffalo in Buffalo the week.
Wheels are that's what I'm saying. They're not going to be able to regather themselves and get to Buffalo for what will probably be a terrible weather game and beat the Bills team that's riding high. Maybe
coming off a bye.
Yeah, probably the best Bills team in 30 plus years since those early 90 teams. They will not be able to correct the ship, and that's what I mean. If they lose against the Packers, they're going to be 5-6. The players are going to know, playoffs aren't going to really happen this year. And then they're going to go to Buffalo, and Buffalo will get up early, and it will just completely fall apart, and you're going to have a team that is completely fractured with half the team already looking at, when can I get to Cabo?
Not half. It's not that big, the Cabo Click. They don't let that many people go to Cabo. There was actually an interesting article, I want to say from Nick Wagoner, I think, about Trent Williams and everything that Trent Williams is doing and changing now to try and still be good now that he's 36 years old. And it talks about when he was in Cabo with the Cabo Click, he ran into LeBron James and they talked about like, hey, how do you take care of your body? Trent Williams, like just now started like eating and dieting, right? Like he stopped eating meat now and he's like taking that's how freakishly talented and gifted this guy was, that at 36 years old, he's like, man, maybe I should watch my diet.
Yeah, there's 2 people that come to mind like that in the NFL. One is Larry Allen. Larry Allen, to me, is still the biggest freak of an athlete that's ever been in the NFL. Very underrated choice. Not only is he the strongest person to ever play in the NFL, and everybody that played with and against him say, yeah, there's nobody that even compares to his strength. And there are stories, if you want to go out there and Google it after the show, not now. This is our time. Yeah. But there are tales of like how crazy, freakish, strong he was. But then the guy could run like a 4.5 40 at 320, like just ridiculous. But he was also big and overweight during his playing career. The other one is Vince Wilfork. Can you imagine if that guy just was like Tom Brady when it came to taking care of his body? I know part of it was the weight helped him, but that guy was a freak athlete too.
There are people that will go to their grave saying defensive linemen are the best athletes on the field. Sometimes it's hard to argue. You know, Trent Williams ran a 4.88. He's like 350 pounds. That's crazy. And he's like,
what happened to the lead blocker Trent Williams pulling play, huh?
They haven't really done that. I don't know that they
did it once.
Yeah, they haven't really done that since. It's a terrifying. Well, with his ankle all messed up, they're probably not going to do it now. But yeah, I remember that. Was that against the Packers?
It might have been because I think they were playing him in the playoffs that year.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. That was a terrifying play. man, we've covered the gamut. I know people are, talking about screen passes. There aren't enough screen passes anymore. Kyle was asked about that today. They actually ran a couple really good ones, like really creative ones. JT O'Sullivan broke it down, and I think one or both got called back due to penalty. One definitely did. I can't remember if the second one did. It's been the 2 steps forward or 1 step forward, 2 steps back all year, basically. And look, they're running out of time. It's desperate time, man. I mean, we are really in the dead worst. I mean, you're already out, and I'm like, well, there's a tiny little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe if we could just win a game and
that's where I was last week. There was a tiny little bit of hope left in me last week.
I mean, if they weren't in this division, they'd be cooked. But the fact that they are in this division is really the only thing that's keeping them alive. Arizona plays Seattle this week, so one of them is going to lose. At least we could take solace in that.
That is true. It's one of those it's one of those years. I cannot remember a season that has been more frustrating. Because yes, there were seasons where I thought, they could be good, like the Mike Singletary years. I was like, oh, we're finally going to be good, and then they weren't. But I also, that's me hoping. You know what I mean? This is a team that I know should be good. And it's also the fact that every single dang game has been close, and they've been failing in all of them. So it's, to me, the amount of frustration I have had watching this team and the amount of times that I was truly just happy during the game is at an all-time low, because every single game has just been a slog.
And I think that's why people are at the Kyle Shanahan level, because it's been so frustrating. I think if it was just a bad year, if it was like a 2020 where they had even more injuries and they were just losing games by double digits, people would be like, all right, you know what, Kyle, get back at it next year. We'll try to restock the cupboard and we'll make another run. But because it's been frustrating the way that it has, people are like, I can't take it anymore. Why are you doing this to my heart? And I understand that frustration, frankly, because it is frustrating to watch. But I just hope that my hope is that I and we, or at least me, I shouldn't speak for anybody else, can provide a little perspective to tell people not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you want to talk about 2 years from now, changing head coaches, I'd be a lot more receptive to the conversation, but not the year after going to the Super Bowl and leading the league in offensive touchdowns.
The thing that I still have hope for is that this is easily fixable in the offseason. There isn't a ton of moves to be made. There are some key, as we discussed it in the instant reaction. You got to break the Cabo click and allow for other voices to step in. You need a tone change there amongst the players' leadership. That doesn't mean getting rid of everybody, but like we said, Juice for sure, Deebo, I think those two are for sure gone. Defensively, there's not a ton I change. I definitely want to get a reliable third linebacker. If Winters doesn't grow at the end of this year, you got to figure out something there. And I am spending the money or using my first round pick for an edge. I would rather get a free agent than I know you got a better chance of it working out than drafting in the first round. But they need something there. But I don't see them needing to truly address the secondary much. I don't see them needing to find a starting linebacker, assuming Greenlaw comes back. And I don't see them needing to get anything else on the defensive line. Obviously, I think Hargrave, he's gone. They can save way too much money on that deal by doing a post-June 1st cut. But there's not a ton needed on this team. It's more they need a little bit of a culture change in that locker room and just a couple key players moved on from.
And they need to have another really good draft class because you need cheap young players.
That is the weird thing. I was thinking about this earlier today. Usually when you're wanting to retool and do a quick rebuild, but keep the coach, you kind of make a change in the front office. Well, that's definitely not the case because what's happening right now is good drafts. And it's the same thing with all right, Kyle's not willing to change, right? You want to try to force them, or I could see like a angle of, well, we want to let him focus on just coaching. So we're taking away his control of personnel decisions. Well, you don't want to do that because the roster is really good.
Right.
So there's no change. That's the only thing I could see them forcing Kyle to do is if he's unwilling to get rid of Deebo or something like that, or Juice. And I do think they need to change some things on the coaching staff, get new voices in there, some new philosophies, get a little more diversity.
Diversity of thought, not diversity.
Yes.
Yeah, because in terms of diversity, they're like they had so much diversity. Other owners were complaining they were getting too many compensatory draft picks.
Yeah.
Grant was adamant that they're going to keep Juice and keep Deebo after this year. I really hope he's wrong because that would cause a culture change. If those guys are out, like that would be a huge step towards that. And let's be honest, the contributions that they are making are simply not commensurate with the salary that they are earning.
That's what they're making. Yeah.
It's the exact reason they got rid of Eric Armstead. And they did get rid of it. And Eric Armstead was a guy that had been there, 9 years? He was one season away from going up on the wall. And everybody loved Eric Armstead. He survived multiple head coaching regimes. Like he was a good guy, great guy off the field, played inside, played outside. And they were like, nope, you're injured too much. You make too much money. Take less or you're out. And he said no. And they got rid of him. So that's what's at least giving me hope that maybe they'll be willing to do that in the offseason. Now, I get it. Eric Armstead is not Deebo, and he's not Juice, so who knows? But that is my hope nonetheless. And that is a wrap on today's show, everybody. I want to thank you for watching. I want to give a special thank you to BetUS once again for sponsoring the video. If you want to sign up for BetUS, use promo code YouTube150. Levin, are you going to be around for the instant reaction show on Sunday?
I will be this week.
All right. You say that. Is this like your last instant reaction show of the season?
No, I can't remember if it's the next week or the one after that I have to miss.
Well, hopefully we are celebrating. I'll be drinking either way. Hopefully it is a happy recap. Please like and subscribe to the Gold Standard Podcast Network and like and subscribe to the Gold Standard 49ers YouTube channel as well. We are steamrolling towards 20,000 followers. I'm not going to lie. I had a pie in the sky goal of getting to 20,000 subscribers this season. I did not think we were going to get there. We are working our way towards there. So if you haven't already liked and subscribed, if this is your first show, please give us a shot. If you have already, tell a friend, tell your mother, tell your sister, tell your wife, tell your husband, whoever. Just give us a subscribe, man. We want to get to 20,000.
And it's all because you started doing a second show with me each week.
The NFL show that we do. That's true. So if you want to hear us talk about more than the 49ers, we do an NFL show every Monday that covers all the games of the week. So you can check that out as well. Enjoy the rest of your, I know it's technically Wednesday night, but I'm going to say Thursday, everybody, and we'll talk to you after the game.